Jewish Channel's Week in Review. What the latest hate crime numbers mean for the Jewish community, detailing the alleged crimes of a former chief rabbi, celebrating a life of illustration, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Jews remain the most targeted religious group for hate crimes in the United States, according to new statistics from the FBI. Fully 62% of religious hate crimes in 2012 targeted the relatively tiny Jewish population in America, meaning that Jews were targeted roughly 30 times more often than their portion of the American public would indicate. Muslims, on the other hand, were targeted about 15 times as often as their share of the American population. Catholics and Protestants were targeted only a fraction of their share. There were fewer than 1,000 Jews victimized by such hate crimes, meaning that the odds of being targeted as a Jew would be roughly 1 in every 6,000 Jews victimized by a hate crime in a given year. To put that in perspective, you're probably about as likely to die in a car accident in a given year as to be a Jewish person victimized by a hate crime in the U.S. One of the interesting quirks of this year's numbers is that they show an overall decline in hate crimes, even though there is no reason to think such crimes went down. That decline is also for anti-Jewish crimes. That's because the FBI only receives data from most, but not all, law enforcement agencies, and this year specifically, at least several of the largest law enforcement agencies didn't report their data due to government budget cuts. Overall, about 1,300 fewer agencies reported data than did last year, about a 10% drop. For this reason, the Jewish hate crimes number is at a 21-year low, but purely because government budget cuts kept some of the data out of the equation. But looking at a crime story dominating headlines in Israel, the saga of former Chief Rabbi Yonah Metzger keeps growing, more detailed following his arrest in November. The allegations leaking out of the criminal investigation include claims that he made at least millions of shekels and perhaps millions of dollars through creative uses of his office and title. Investigators said they found cash stuffed inside his holy books, cash that they allege he received as payments for a wide variety of activities. They allege he took payments to push conversions through the rabbinate, at the same time as his office was decertifying thousands of conversions performed by American Orthodox rabbis as insufficient on technical grounds. He's also alleged to have taken money to get rabbinate decisions to go one way or the other on weddings, divorces, and kosher supervision matters. They allege that he received at least millions of shekels to attend events as the chief rabbi, while the government covered his expenses. Specifically, Yediot Achronot reports a claim that Metzger received a payment worth $85,000 to attend the 70th anniversary commemoration of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, a trip for which he was the State of Israel's official representative, and thus had already had his expenses covered by Israeli taxpayers. They allege that Metzger would use his state office and expense accounts to travel to fundraisers, where he would then receive large payments for his presence and for speaking at the fundraisers. His fee, according to Yediot Achronot, would sometimes reach 50% of the funds raised at an event at which he spoke. And finally, Israeli law enforcement alleges that Metzger tried to pay the key witness against him to take the fall for him, offering him $1 million to do so at the time. Unfortunately for Metzger, that person was, according to the government, secretly taping that conversation as an informant to the government. As you might expect, these kinds of revelations are already opening up the possibility of legislation to reform the chief rabbinate, and a bill has already passed through a Knesset committee that would abolish dual chief rabbi roles at the municipal level, essentially cutting in half the number of chief rabbis of cities and other areas around Israel. And in a sign that the chief rabbinate is finding ways to reform itself, the rabbinate and Israel's Religious Services Ministry have for the first time allowed women to become kosher food supervisors and certifiers. Moving on, some of the most famous faces are known famously through the illustrations of Al Hirschfeld. Meredith Gansman covers a new exhibit of his works.
This is Al Hirschfeld's desk and barber chair, where he created for over 80 years. And now the Lion King's library is on display for you at the New York Public Library Center for Performing Arts. Although the late artist Al Hirschfeld drew portraits of everyone from television personalities to politicians, he is best known as a caricaturist and illustrator of the theater. His wife, Louise Kurz Hirschfeld, the president of the Al Hirschfeld Foundation, explained.
He would take a production that was on Broadway, and he had this magical gift of finding the great moment in an actor's performance or a great moment in a play, and he could transcribe that into graphic terms.
Hirschfeld's drawings show his subjects in freeze frame, capturing the actor's love for the theater, a love he very much shared. according to Tony Award-winning actor and director Tommy Tune.
Well, he's Broadway. He's theater, but he's Broadway.
Tune was the subject of Hirschfeld's last illustration for the New York Times.
And he gave me about 20 legs, and it looked like I was dancing. He had really finally, instead of having frozen motion, your eye danced, and there were shuddering legs. I couldn't believe how he accomplished that. He was a wonderful guy. I got to know him some. We drank Maker's Mark on the rocks together.
And in getting to know him over those drinks, what beyond the illustrator did you learn about this icon?
The incredible fascination and love for the theater. He just loved the theater and what we did. He loved us. And so he devoted his life to depicting it.
Though Hirschfeld did not specifically search out Jewish subjects, his drawings of them reflect his pride in his Jewish heritage. Kurt Hirschfeld said,
When he did someone like Zero Mostel in Waiting for Godot, there was something about the way he did Zero Mostel that really spoke to his performance as Tevye.
Hirschfeld also always honored his daughter Nina, hiding her name in most of his drawings since her birth in 1945. His life's work has preserved the theater for future generations of audiences, American songman Michael Feinstein said.
For example, the original cast album of My Fair Lady has a drawing that Hirschfeld did that is immediately conjured by most people who think of My Fair Lady.
From programs, newspapers, to billboards, David Leopold, exhibit curator and Hirschfeld archivist, says if there was a printed surface, there's been a Hirschfeld drawing on it. For each illustration, Hirschfeld created a graphic problem that he solved, Leopold explained.
He would get up in the morning and go to the drawing board, and there was a white board facing him. And it didn't care how many awards he had won and how many publications he had been in. He had to create a drawing that was going to keep him interested as well as his audience.
To see more from the Lion King's library, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, Lihi Lapid is a journalist and women's issues columnist in Israel. She's also the wife of Israel Finance Minister Yair Lapid. She explores women's issues in Israel through several narratives in a book now out in English, Women of Valor. She stopped by TJC Studios to talk about her book and the cause of women in the Jewish state, and here are the highlights. It was a little surprising to me to hear that you were coming out with a novel, but then in many ways this novel is an autobiographical book.
It was published in Israel 4 years ago, so much long before any political inspiration or something. It's motherhood, it's being a mother, it's being mothers totally. It's what it is to be a woman. So yes, there is a part of it that is autobiographical, but I think it was because I wanted to write about motherhood, and I felt that it won't be honest and fair to write about other mothers without talking about my experience as a mother.
And so from that perch, from writing about women over the course of a decade, women's issues over the course of a decade, receiving so many letters from Israeli women over the course of a decade, what is your sense of how the situation for women has changed?
I remember when I heard that there are parts of Israel that women are driving at the back of the bus. I couldn't believe it. I said, someone is inventing something. It can't be it can't be true. So I dressed as an Orthodox, kind of, and went to Bnei Brak in order to see it. And I was standing there watching women go from the back door of the bus, and I was shocked. I couldn't go really in because everybody spotted in 1 minute that I'm not Orthodox. I don't know how, I don't know why. I got all the skirts in the right position, but and then I wrote a piece about it, and I think also that took people like 2 months later only. Because I think maybe people like me didn't believe it's really true.
Now you've traveled a fair amount as part of your work, and as part of kind of this almost in-depth, years-long study of Israeli women. In what ways do you feel Israeli women are perhaps distinct?
I think we're less scared.
Less scared.
Yeah. I think you know, this environment that we grow up in, that every moment something can happen, makes us sometimes focus some more about the now. And that's something I love. And it's also a message that I would love other women to get it, because we can enjoy now. We can be happy now. What happened in the past, and sometimes it's better to leave it because we can't change it. And the future, totally not up to us. So now can be good. And I think, and I'm inviting women to enjoy every minute that is with happiness. And I invite men too.
You can see the full interview with Lihi Lapid in the interviews category under TJC Original Series on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Cable Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and on Comcast in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.